am back with another video, and today we're going to talk about 5 ways you know that it is time to go from your current career. This was actually a request from a subscriber, and I thought it was a really, really good one. I've moved on from a couple of jobs over the course of my career, and all for various reasons. And you do usually, during any interview process, have to explain why you've left other roles. But before we get started, I've got a couple of things to chat you up about. First of all, I am just now fully recovering from the flu, which basically kicked my ass, excuse my French, sorry if you have kids watching, for about 2 weeks, and it was serious. So I just want to tell you guys, if you're out there, please, just take care of yourself. Make sure you take the flu seriously, because those stories you see on the news are very, very true. I have not felt that terrible probably in the whole entirety of my life. That includes childbirth, and that includes some, other things that I've been through. So you want to make sure that if you come down with those symptoms, you take them seriously. You don't go back to work earlier than you need to go back to work. And also, I wish I hadn't gotten the flu in the first place, and I got the flu because somebody who had the flu was out there touching things, and I picked it up from them. So please do everyone a service. If you have the flu or if you feel sick, stay home, keep everyone else well. It's the kindest thing that you can do. The second thing I want to talk about is, since I was home with the flu for quite a long time, I was out of work over a week. I got to catch up on some TV, Netflix in particular. And if you didn't know, the series Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, which was out years ago, has now gotten a makeover, and it's just called Queer Eye. And it is so good. The guys on that show are lovable. I'd love to be friends with all of them in real life. They've got amazing taste, amazing style, and just really loving and caring personalities. So if you haven't seen it, I think there are maybe 7 episodes. If you've not seen it, just check it out on Netflix. You will not regret it, especially if you love a comeback story. I love to see people live in their very best potential and live their very best life, and that's 100% what that show is about for sure. So with that, why don't we jump into the career portion of this video. If you've got questions, by the way, about what I have on, I did snap a picture this morning as I was getting dressed, so I will insert that now so you can see the full head to toe look. I just bought a few pieces from Zara. This is one of the pieces, and I really, really love it. Very easy to wear, and just a really great piece that I feel like I'll have for a long time. The jewelry, these earrings, I believe are from Loft. I paid next to nothing for them. And these 2 necklaces are from Nordstrom. I think they might be Nadri, but I've just layered my first name, my initial, with my with this kind of like bar type necklace. So the shoes I have on, I think I took a picture with shoes off and shoes on. They are the Dior slingbacks, and I never thought I would like them. I love Erica's Girly World. I love her channel. I think her style is so cute and so her. And when she hauled these for the first time, I was like, I don't know. It's just not me. But then my essay from Nordstrom, Alex at Valley Fair, even though I live in Atlanta, reached out with a photo of these, and I was like, let me give them a try, and I'm so glad I did. I bought them in the nude, and they're going to go with so many outfits and take me into the spring. So super excited about those. With that out of the way, we're 4 minutes into the video, and I want to get on with the career tips. Thank you for the feedback on these videos. You've said that these are really helpful to you and you enjoy watching them, and that my luxury hauls are just a nice little added bonus. So I'm going to do a lot more of these videos. And again, this was a subscriber request to say, how do you know when it's time to move on from a role? And so I pulled 5 ways out of my work experience. Of course, you might have different reasons that you've moved on. And if so, feel free to add to the conversation in the comment box below. Or if you've got a question for me in terms of the way you're feeling about your certain role, I'm never going to tell you to move on or not, but maybe I can ask you a couple questions that will clarify your own decision. Because at the end of the day, how we handle our careers, there are certainly best practices, but for sure, it's a very personal and individual situation. So I will get into the first way you know it's time to go, and that is, excuse me for looking down, I've got some notes written in my agenda, when the demands of the job no longer are in line with your lifestyle. So this happened to me my very first job out of college. I worked for a large multinational corporation, GE, I'm sure you all know, and I was accepted into a leadership development program, and it was the very best way to start my career. I do not regret that one bit, and I worked very, very hard. The demands of the job were not only that you had a day job, but then you also took classes and came up to a level of proficiency that GE would expect, in my case, their finance professionals to have. After that particular role in that program, which I did for 2.5 years, I moved on to their leadership accelerant called GE Corporate Audit Staff. And that was some amazing time, amazing experiences. I worked all over the world. During that time, I married my husband. Now my husband will be this year 17 years. So I've been married the majority of my work career. So I continued to travel and work all over the world. However, he was also starting to build his career, or continuing to build his career. And the demands at the time, I don't know if this is different now of GE, was that you move every 18 to 24 months into a different role. Now, the program that I was selected in consisted of 10 other males and me, so I was the only female, and some of those guys who are talented and very successful to this day had wives who had jobs that were more flexible, or wives who over the course of the coming years decided to stay home and raise families, and those types of situations were more conducive to having one individual who moved periodically every 2, maybe even every 3 years. However, for me, that was not the case. And when I realized to continue to accelerate that I would have to do that, it was time for me to look for another job. So that was a situation where my life had evolved over the course of the time that I was with that company, and what they were about to ask me to do was no longer in line with something that I could support as half of a married couple. So reason number one, with the demands of the job no longer are in line with the lifestyle you would like to live. The second time you may want to consider leaving your current role is when you lose your sponsorship. So when you're hired into a role, you typically automatically have at least one fan, and that's the manager who hired you, especially if you come in and you do a great job and you're responsible, resourceful, you show that you're easy and pleasant to work with. You've got people on your team. But just like you, those individuals have opportunities and aspirations that come up for them, and they should take advantage of those opportunities. And so in my next role with a public accounting firm, I was brought in by an amazing partner who remains a mentor, a sponsor, a career sounding board to this day. But he ended up having an opportunity with the same firm to move to another location. And when that happened, new leadership came in, and those leaders like to put their own people in place. And it's not that, that's a longer story about that particular role, because it has to do a lot with, being a mother and some of the transitions that were happening in my life. But that new leadership was no longer as invested or vested in growing me professionally, providing me opportunities. And I was still at a point in my career, and I still am at a point in my career where I needed that leadership, mentorship, and guidance. And so when that individual left, for me, it was really time to consider leaving that particular position. I can't say I was as self-aware in those roles as I am right now, because in that same role, I held on for a little bit longer than I absolutely should have. I probably should have left probably a year before I actually decided to. But God knows best. And that next role that I took was one that catapulted me into senior executive leadership and changed the direction of my career with a wonderful, wonderful company with solid leadership, which I have respect and love for to this day. I no longer work for that company any longer. That brings me to the third reason to leave a job. And I will say, even though I've had transitions in my career, it was never my intention ever to go into a job for a short-term stint. Not ever. But you will find that as your career is happening, life happens, or other opportunities present themselves. So this was the next reason that I decided it was time to go, which was when life choices kind of forced your hand. So I mentioned that I moved on to a wonderful company, and I love that company. I was with that company for a number of years, would have never left. Fortunately, beautifully, that company is the role that moved me to California, and I loved that job. Unfortunately, in Southern California, the job opportunities are limited, and when my husband was laid off, he was now in a position where he was looking for a new role. And so that role that he found was in Northern California, and we sort of tried to make the dual location thing work, and it worked, from a relationship perspective. But I had had a son years earlier. My son was turning 5. It was time to make decisions about where he was going to go to school. And I knew that my son, needed to be in a place where both of his parents were there. With his dad flying back and forth, every weekend, it was one, added expense, and two, just logistically very, very difficult. So as my husband looked for a job, and I prayed that he would find a job in the location that we were in, things ended up taking off for him in another location, and life kind of forced my hand to say, I have to make the best choice for my family. My son is at this certain stage right now. Because of what I do, the jobs in, sort of my line of work, they're not plentiful, but I, can go out and make a meaningful effort to find one, and that's what happened. So it was kind of life choices forcing my hand. I think the difference between when the demands of the job no longer equal your lifestyle, that's a little bit different in that, that is a active choice to leave. In this example, when life choices force your hand, whether it's it might be my husband's situation for you, where one of you, needs to work and finds an opportunity somewhere else. It might be a divorce. It might be a death in the family. It might be a layoff. It might be something else for you guys. But sometimes things happen that are outside of your control, and it's time to go. I did do everything in that role to try and make it work. I proposed, me working from other locations, but at the end of the day, it does come down to what is best for the company. And although I know that company would have loved to retain me, they really needed somebody in the location that I was in to serve the role that I was doing. Now, number 4, moving on to that one, this is, again, one of those things that are out of your control. When you have a boss you just don't vibe with. And this is a rarity for me in my career because I've pretty much developed the skills to be able to work with anyone from, the most accommodating to the most difficult. But this was a situation in a role, and I'm not going to say company and I'm not going to say name at all, where I came in on the promise of having the top position in that role after a grooming period. My boss who hired me, again, was a combination of a little bit, ended up leaving the company sooner than we all anticipated. And it was right at the very beginning of my grooming process. So they decided to go out into the world and see what they could do, which I don't blame them for. They did allow me to interview against other folks for the role that I was interested in. And ultimately they chose someone else, which is 100% okay. This individual, he and I had very different leadership philosophies. I do think that there was a bit of insecurity on his part in terms of, I'm very good at my job, and I'm very good at relating to people. I tend to be well liked and respected for my skill set where I work. And I think that that was just too much for this individual, and I'm being completely candid. And so he started to do things to undermine, me as a professional. Example of those things, he ended up taking all of my direct reports away. He put me on an assignment where I would have to work alone on something very, very technical. So all of the client interfacing and stakeholder interfacing, it was within a company, opportunities where I shined, he tried to create less of those opportunities. Not to mention that he was not very well liked or respected by the existing team that he came in to lead. And it became very, very clear that he wanted to clear out leadership and put his own people in. And so for the reasons of, one, I had came to that organization to do the top job and that didn't work out. And two, because of differences with my new leader, who has all the authority and should absolutely be able to make the changes and decisions that that individual would like to make, it was time for me to move on. And number 5, I would say, is when you feel like you're not growing in a role. So there was also another role with another company where, you know, I came in, I had done the top job before, but I came in as the number 2. And I had a lot of fun doing the role. I had a great team full of amazing people. The company was great. But I was approached actually by one of our service providers, which we partnered with, and said, and that person said, "You're not being challenged. I can tell that you're capable of doing more, and I have an opportunity that I've been made aware of that could be the perfect fit for you." And when I really went home and thought about that conversation, reflected on the fact that, yeah, I wasn't particularly challenged. I wasn't particularly growing, and even my boss in that role, who's an amazing guy, just such a great guy, even to this day, sat me down and said, I'm not going to go anywhere in this top role. And so I want to see your career grow and develop and flourish. And I feel like you're capable of so much. And so, if you're waiting for the top spot here, you're going to be waiting for a long time. And he said this out of love. He said this out of respect for me as a professional. And it's one of those conversations that was just a pat on the back and something I will never forget, because he acknowledged me putting my all into that particular role, but knew that I could do much, much more. And I was ready to do much, much more. And I thank him to this day for that. And I ended up moving on to another role probably about 6 months after we had that conversation. So I hope that helps. Those are 5 reasons, at least in my career, that I've decided to move on to another role. Let me also take a step back to say the answer is not always moving to another company. It might be moving to another division. It might be broadening your skill set. It might be working for another leader. It might be going back and gaining some professional development. There are a lot of ways to mix up your career and figure out how to take things to the next level. So with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. I hope that you found this helpful. If there's a particular scenario that you'd like me to go into more detail, or if you'd like to do some sort of career Q&A, I'd be happy to do that with you. I've fought hard for the role that I have and the opportunities that I've had. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication, a lot of successes, a lot of disappointments, and I'm willing and able to, and I'm willing to share them all with you. So with that, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Would love to hear what you think in the comments. And if you like career advice, if you like fashion, if you like luxury, then hit that subscribe button so you're reminded every time I upload a video. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.